Okay, so what we're here to do is to fix the audio on this edit and demonstrate some of the sort of intermediate and then more advanced audio editing techniques in Premiere Pro. And the main aim of this tutorial is to get your sound output to a level that would be suitable to submit to a film festival or even just to upload to YouTube. So beginning with this, I'm going to have to play this audio and listen to what's happening. I can see a few things are up with the way it's laid out, but I'll just play it first.
Bad Blood is about a writer whose past is coming back to haunt him, and he's grief-stricken and trying to move on.
Okay, just going to assume that this is linked. Okay, great. So first of all, I have my interview content on this line, and then I have some sound effects and I have the music track. So the first thing that I would do would be to go through this and label, oops, not record over my track, label my tracks. So this would be rename interview. I would normally put the name of the person. I'll call him Bob, and I would write down the type of microphone. So if it was a lapel mic, which I don't think this was, but I would say interview Bob lapel, right? And then I would probably have a couple of tracks for interviews, and I would rename this to interview Joe lapel for whatever microphone type you've used. And then going further down, I might add a track for, oops, I didn't mean to do that. I might just label this as VFX 01. Normally I would have two of them, so if I want to overlay a couple of tracks, I can do that. But for this edit, one will do just fine. What I also have is the B-roll audio, and it's sitting on the Joe lapel mic track. So I would add another track. No video tracks. I'll add one after the music track. No, I'll add it after the first track. After interview Bob lapel, and I won't add a submix. So cool, I have another track in there, and I might call this I mean, you can call it whatever you want. There's probably better conventions, but for now, I'll just call it that. Or BG, background audio. And then we have the music layer, which is already labeled as music, and I might have two of those. So generally speaking, if you're doing a documentary, you might have three people being interviewed, or with different types of microphones, and each one of those people you would want to put on a separate track, because later on you will be applying different dynamics filters, and everybody's voice is different. So generally everybody has a different dynamics filter applied. Okay, so what I have is this, and let's say I just mute this track so I can hear, or I don't need to
Bad Blood.
Mute that. I can just press S on the one that I do want to hear.
Bad Blood is about a writer whose past is coming.
Right, so what I'm hearing here is that it's only coming out of one channel, and the left side is playing nothing. So what I would do is I'd go into here, and I would go into audio channels, and I would probably have them both playing the right channel. So the same audio will be played through left and right. If I did both left, then they would both become silent. So both right channels are playing in the left and right. Right, so here we go.
His past is coming back to haunt him, and he's...
You can hear the difference.
Grief-stricken.
And again, if I...
Grief-stricken and trying to...
I've just realized I have my speakers around the wrong way because that's playing out of my left speaker. So I will have to rearrange that on my own setup here. So again, I would go up to, where is it? Audio channels and change them both to right. Okay, you can do that en masse. This one already has it, but if I go into audio channels, make them both right, it didn't do it because there's a variation of lefts and rights, and I'll have to go in there and do it manually. So it's pretty quick. You just go through. That one's already there. Audio channels. Okay, great. So this is the sort of thing that you would do as you're editing. If you notice something like this occurring in the assembly phase, then it would be your chance to correct it as you go along. So I don't think you would ever get an edit that is done this terribly. Okay, so here we go.
Bad Blood is about a writer who...
What I would also do is put constant powers on any joins in clips to avoid pops. Now, sometimes the pops on a cut in audio is not audible through your headphones. And once you play it out loud on good quality speakers, you'll start to hear this sort of thing. Or once you start putting filters on, these kind of things become more pronounced. So it's a rule of thumb to put constant powers on the cuts. And sometimes these constant powers need to be really wide, and other times they don't particularly work, or they take too many syllables from the previous. So if I did this, you'll start to hear that it starts taking some of this audio and putting it on this side, this part of the blend.
And he's grief-stricken.
It's very subtle in this one, but in others you'll notice it happens a lot more. So you don't need to put any bigger constant gain than this. And sometimes you need it to be pushed up hard against one side or the other, depending on what the blend is doing. But for the purpose of this, you would basically go through and add this to all of your cuts. Occasionally it can take the S's off, words. So you've got to be really careful to kind of maintain what the speech whilst also trying to eliminate the pops. So if I go back and play this again.
Bad Blood is about a writer whose past is coming back to haunt him, and he's grief-stricken and trying to move on, and he meets this young woman, Carrie, who is like a light in his life.
And now, so that's one thing we've heard, and that is that this audio has done something weird, right? So firstly, I'll go into the audio channels and I see that it's still left and right. I put them both in the right channel, and I might bring this up to 0. In fact, generally speaking, when I have interview content, I'll bring all of the max peaks to 0. So I'm hitting the G key once I've selected the clip, and that is bringing that all up.
It's like a light.
Now this is just not working, and I'm not exactly sure. I know that this is being broken on purpose, but let's bring that up, right? Because I selected all the clips, it's going to normalize them according to all the peaks and troughs, and occasionally you'll need to select the clip individually to bring it up to the correct level. So here we go.
This young woman, Carrie, who is like a light in his life, and then it kind of all goes a bit pear-shaped.
Right, okay, so you can hear that.
It's like a light in his...
That pop.
In his...
Right, so you might want to just blend that. You might be able to fix it like that, or you may need to kind of silence all this out, or cut it. So let's see.
In his...
Let's have a look.
A light in his...
It's kind of weird. We could do this.
A light in his life.
Right, it's still a little bit abrupt, but we can work with it. Let's see what happens if I do this.
Light in his life.
Great. So
light in his life.
As long as we have that hard t at the end of that sentence, that will work.
Light in his life, and then it kind of all goes a bit...
And these sentences are perhaps a little bit close together. Let's have a look.
In his life, and then it kind of...
We could either space it out, or we could also put a constant power here. Let's see what it sounds like.
His life, and then it kind of...
Right, so here we go.
In his life, and then it...
in his live. Let's see if I move it that way.
Life, and then it kind
That works. Okay, so here we
of
go.
in his life, and then it kind of all goes a bit pear-shaped.
Okay, so perhaps we want to have that blend in underneath the next. Oof, he took a very sharp intake of breath. Maybe not. Maybe not. Okay. I might even keyframe some of this down just a little. Ugh. We'll come back to that one. All right.
All goes a bit pear-shaped.
I don't really like the way he sucks the air in at the end of that sentence, but let's see. Yeah. Guess there's not much we can do about it. Let's have a look. Okay, so we'll come back to that one. So we're basically cleaning up all the joins and we're moving right along. I'm going to leave all of these out for the minute because I'm only working on the interview Bob lapel track. Obviously, I need to come back in here and fix this. So all the channels, I mean, I might be able to select all of these. Let's have a look. Audio channels, right. Sweet. Just do it to all of them en masse. Now I feel like this other channel is playing, I don't know what. Let's have a look.
There's some crazy stuff going on.
There's some crazy background noise happening there. I think if I swap the audio channel so it was all the left channel, you could hear this. It's some serious noise in the back there, but I'm just going to change that to the right channel and we're good. Let's see.
Some crazy stuff going on.
This will need some extra editing, but we come back to here and we're listening to this in solo again. And I will add, oops, not a keyframe, a constant power to the start of that so it blends.
The biggest challenge is trying to find a motivation for Gilroy that wasn't just crazy and maniacal and evil for the sake of evil. I
feel like he starts saying the next sentence there, so I will put a constant power on that so it fades out just a touch. Let's see.
Evil for the sake of evil.
Yep, that's fine. And then again, applying a constant power between these.
Just crazy.
Right. Okay, so as I go along, I'll bring up all of my audio levels to 0. Right, here we go, next one.
He's defined by...
What is he saying?
He's...
I think this clip has been...
Suppose he's...
Cropped?
I suppose he's defined... You
want to say he is, or I suppose he is? Let's see how it works.
Evil for the sake of evil. I suppose he's defined by...
I suppose he is, or you could say he is.
He's...
That's up to you. But for the moment, I will, whoops, take that full sentence and put a constant power between these two. Let's see how that works.
Defined is defined by his envy and his self-loathing.
I'll put a blend here, right? But generally speaking, when you hear someone take a sharp intake of breath, it's not exactly the best thing to be hearing, but we might be able to filter that out. So,
and his self-loathing and the fact that he was forgotten.
That sound is definitely needs to go. It's kind of like the sound of him smacking his lips.
And the fact that he was forgotten.
That, right? I might want to filter that out with a notch filter. Okay, so if the notch filter doesn't work, and I will remove it just so we don't have anything extra, I might do it the old-fashioned way, and that is to just silence that, and I'll have to add some scratch to it later. So let's see what it looks like.
He was forgotten. It kind of...
Okay, great. He was forgotten, and
it kind of generated... Forgotten. It kind of generating all this spite and hatred.
So this track currently has, where to save this file is something else actually. Save as, hang on, cancel, file, Save as blood audio 2, just so I don't save over the original. Okay, so I can hear
it kind of generating
a lot of background noise in this one. Now, one way to get rid of this is to filter it. And I would ordinarily go into this drop menu. So I'm right clicking on my clip. I go to edit clip in Audition. And this will load up my audio and I'll be able to play that, right? But what I can also do is select a section of the audio that it's just playing. It's just the background noise and capture noise print, right? So now that's captured this sound. And if I select all and then go to effects, noise reduction and process, I will be able to
kind of generating,
apply that. I can, adjust the graph a little depending on how much effect you want that to have, or you can adjust these. You can't go too far because then it creates artifacts. So if I play this,
it kind of generating,
you can hear a kind of weird rumbling sound in the background.
Generating all this, it kind of
if I go higher,
generating all this, it kind of generating all this.
Start to hear it in the background. So what I'll do is I'll just apply that. If I hit save, minimize this, it automatically updates it in Premiere Pro. See what it's done to the quality of the sound.
It kind of generating all this.
What I'm hearing, it sounds like a helicopter in the background.
It kind of
and it hasn't helped. So I might go to noise reduction, de-hummer, de-noise. Let's have a look. So if I apply a de-noiser to this, light noise reduction, let's have a look at what it sounds like.
It kind of generating all. It kind of generating all this spite and hate. It kind of
not ideal. Let's output the noise only. Better not do that.
Generating all this spite.
It's a lot better.
It kind of generating all this spite.
I can still hear kind of helicopter sound in the background. So if I select this and let's say I remove the denoiser, let's have a look at what happens if I put a de-hummer on there. Edit. Okay, let's have a look.
It kind of generating all.
Not ideal, right? So I'll close that. De-hummer is not the one. And sometimes it's up to you to kind of decide what's going to work for you. So if I go light noise reduction, sweet, that's been applied.
It kind of generating all.
Still not ideal.
It kind of generating. Forgotten. It kind of forgotten.
Bit of background noise happening on these clips. A bit of major background noise happening on these clips. Sometimes if you can't add the numbers in, you can key them in.
It kind of generating all this spite and hatred.
And I'll just apply a general denoiser to this one. Light noise reductions, okay.
All this spite and hatred.
I feel like if I hadn't edited this in Adobe Audition, the clip would be a lot better. So I'll go back to here and undo the changes that I made to it and see if that's had an effect. So let's remove that.
It kind of generating all this spite and hatred.
Yep, that's a lot better. I believe that the noise reduction that I applied to the previous clip had a negative effect on that. So
kind of generating all this spite and hatred.
So because this is the beginning of a clip, I can't apply this to that clip, the constant power. So what I'll do is I'll just key it in and hopefully
generating all of spite.
Still too much.
All this spite and hatred.
All right. That's
generating all this spite and hatred.
Still doesn't sound like he's saying the correct syllables. And I stretch this out because the sound ends there.
Getting all this spite and hatred.
And can that go a bit further?
Hatred.
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 And there's a clicking sound in there. Did you hear it?
Hatred. Hatred. And hatred. Hatred.
It cleaned it up a little. It didn't clean it up entirely.
Fight and hatred.
Ugh, I can still hear it.
Fight and hatred.
And I need the word. I need the d.
Hatred. And hatred.
All right, I'll come back to that one.
There's all sorts of crazy stuff going on.
Ugh. Okay.
There's all sorts of crazy stuff.
Again, let's see.
There's also.
I feel like that's been cut off. So yeah.
There's also. There's all sorts of crazy stuff going on.
So I will clean up the sound of that slamming door at some other time. But essentially,
Going on.
I could extend that laugh. I'll extend it to about there. Bring the constant power. Right. Okay. So it could be cleaner, but as a first pass, we have a few constant powers on the connections. We've brought all the levels up to 0, and that's fine for now. Okay. So the next thing we have is the B-roll audio, which is actually should be on that line. At times, I tend to label my B-roll in a different color so that it makes it clearer. So you could also do that. And then what you can see here is that the audio has been, so I'm just going to single this out. The audio has been turned down manually here, which is what I don't want to do. I mean, occasionally, sure, you could keyframe the audio levels, but what I will do is I'm just going to remove attributes, not the opacity, not the motion, not the time remapping, only the volume, right? So, okay, cool. And I'll do the same for this one. Remove attributes. We'll just only want to remove anything that's been done to the volume. Okay, so that returns it back to the base level. I'll zero this out and let's see what it sounds like.
So I've just stayed with him as much as.
Right, so this is kind of like just background noise. And I guess if I fully silence it, it will take away from the B-roll. So at worst, I might want to bring some of that in before the visuals and leave some of it out. J&L cutting, and I might hit G and adjust the gain by like -10. And I'm doing it there so that it's neater. So if I play this.
So I've just stayed with him as much as possible.
Feels like it's still a bit loud. So maybe I need to reduce the second one by another -3. And then what I might like to do is play it. So I'll play this and that together and see how it works.
This young woman, Carrie, who is like a light in his life, and then it kind of all goes.
Right. So that will be enough for that one. And then I would go through again. So removing attributes from all of these. Whoops, I didn't want to do that. Remove attributes. I'll get rid of only the volume. Bring all the levels back up to 0. And I will blend between these, even though this is sort of secondary sound.
And then he can roll me over.
Okay, cool, that's fine, but it's a bit loud. So I might -6 that.
So if he's gone,
Maybe it's still a bit loud. So -3, and then let's see.
so if he's
I might play it with the
so if he's gone, and then he can roll me over.
The biggest challenge is trying to find.
fine. That's fine. Okay, so actually, let's see how that blends out.
The motivation for Gilroy that
it's okay.
Find a motivation for Gilroy that
That's fine. Okay, so moving right along, and these ones have been unenabled. So I'm going to hit Shift E to re-enable them. So I select, holding the Shift key, holding the Alt key, I can select only these tracks. And if I hit Shift E, I unenable them so I can't hear them even if I'm wanting to play them. So I have to enable those to be able to hear them. And this volume is way loud. So what I will do is I'll select all these clips, remove attributes from the volume, and keep all the other attributes because I've got a warp stabilizer on there. And here we go. These sounds are not very prominent. So I'll just really bring those levels down. And obviously I'm just throwing a blend in between these clips because I don't want to hear clicks and pops. Let's see what that sounds like for this one. Just a little bit of background noise. So that it's not completely out of context. I feel like this is too loud again, so I might -8 or even further. Let's see what happens. Okay. I feel like also that this might happen a bit earlier. I want to see the, oops, I'd like to see that firing. Oops. Sure. It has a warp stabilizer on it, so I want to see that. Okay. Right. Will I see that if I do the, yeah, I see it. Fine. Okay, so I have a rough assembly and I'm not putting a blend here because I want to hear that sound. I mean, I could do a really tiny one, but I think it'll take away. So that's with it. This is with it. It's a bit more impactful. And sometimes if you have something like that and you really want to make it impactful, you might even force it to be super loud. Just to, but I'm not going to do that this time. Okay, so I've put blends between all the background noises. I've done the same with the interview. I've raised these up to 0. Let's have a look at what the VFX sound is doing. Whatever, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, then I have the music, right? So singling out each track so you can hear what the heck is going on. It's always useful. This is fine, blah, 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 blah. Then I get to the cut. Also, I probably don't want the volume to be affected manually there. So I've brought the volume back up to regular. And you can hear that pop. Right, so all I'm going to do is put a constant power in between, make the blend a bit wider. It's a little bit clunky, but it's not bad. And then also do the same towards the end. All right, so rough audio edits. Where are all my clips? Here they are. Okay, so that's what we have. Minimize all tracks. Okay, pretty basic. And from here, what have I yet to do? So if I go into Window and I go to Audio Clip Mixer, then I can start to see as I play this,
it is about a writer
you can see what's happening with the levels, right? So the music is here, the VFX here, etc., and I can bring the sound up and down globally based on what track it's on. So you can see that B-roll, interview Bob Lapel. All of these are labeled here. And what I want to do is display the, not the audio meters, the audio track mixer. Okay. This is what I'm after. Okay, so what I would do is I have interview Bob Lapel. So I find it, I believe it's this one. Great. And I head up to here, effect selection, amplitude and compression. And I hit a dynamics filter on there, right? So I want to edit that dynamics filter. Now here's where the good stuff is, right? Definitely I want to put a limiter on so that my audio can never max out. And I usually hit -6 on the limiter. So as I'm playing,
about a writer whose past is coming.
Anything that goes above -6 decibels will be clipped, right? So if I actually adjusted the gain by like 20 and made this insanely loud.
Bad Blood is about a writer whose past.
Sure, it distorts the sound, but it's not going to allow that to go above -6 decibels. So I'm hitting a limiter on that. And anytime that the limiter kicks in, oops, I just hit my mic. This red light will light up.
A writer whose past is coming back to haunt.
Okay, so that's that one. Then we have a compressor. Now, what I have is the ratio, and I generally put that up to 3. And what I want to do is to ensure that, so basically I'm compressing all the peaks down, and then I'm pulling up all of the audio levels to meet sort of like a uniform volume. That means that the quiet moments and the super loud moments all kind of flatten out and they all become a kind of uniform level of loudness. So as I play this, right, and I'm going to single out only Bob Lapel, right?
Bad Blood is about a writer whose past is coming back to haunt him, and
the limiter is not kicking in at all. So that means my volume is now being compressed and it's way too low. So if I hit -12 on the threshold.
Bad Blood is about a writer whose past is coming back.
And I make it up, meaning I pull everything up by 3 decibels.
Bad Blood is about a writer whose past is coming.
It's limiting a little bit too hard. So I would reduce that down to 2. What you want is that the limiter kicks in now and again, not all the time, because you'll find that there's distortion in the audio. So
Bad Blood is about a writer whose past is coming back to haunt him, and he's grief-stricken and trying to move on, and he meets.
So I would still probably go to 2.5 because the limiter is not kicking in enough. You want sort of a balance.
He's grief-stricken and trying to move on, and he meets this young woman, Carrie, who is like a light in his life, and then it kind of all goes a bit pear-shaped.
Right. So
the biggest challenge is trying to find a motivation for Gilroy that was.
I feel, and this is my measure of whether or not this is kind of the right balance, is that when it kicks in now and again, then I feel like we've hit the right balance. So my threshold is -12 decibels. I always put a ratio of 3. I don't tend to touch these figures. And my makeup is obviously once you've pushed down your peaks, you bring up all the levels together, and that's my 2.5. So I'm limiting to -6. My ratio is always at 3. I change the threshold to suit my voice, and I make it up by, in this case, 2.5, but you would have to figure out what your balance is. I am not going to apply any dynamics filtering to the background audio. I feel like this is not a bad level, but if I, for example, want to push that down just a little bit further, then I can go directly to the B-roll and just manually, -2 the entire track.
Bad Blood is about a writer whose past is coming back to haunt him, and he's
See that it's
grief-stricken
limited to
and trying.
oops, sorry, I can't talk in comparison. So it's absolutely limiting, hard limiting to -6. Now, what else do I need to do? My music levels, as he is speaking, my music needs to drop down low enough to allow for his voice to be heard without this mess interrupting it. So what I would do is I would add a track. Oops. Add a submix track, right? So my submix is here. And essentially, and I will stretch this up a bit further, I would apply the music to the submix to the music. So if I find my music track, here we go, and then I apply the submix to that, and probably the B-roll audio can be affected by the submix, that's fine. And what I would do is, as he starts speaking, I put some keyframes in, right? So bring it down the other way. He's speaking, and then I just bring the audio to like -6, roughly -6, -7. And then again, he's about to start speaking. Finishes speaking here. So essentially, instead of adjusting all the audio on my music track, I can have a clean line of music and then I just adjust on the submix. So if I play this, and I would say that these blends are a little bit too abrupt, but let's go.
Bad Blood is about a writer whose past is coming back to haunt him, and he's
Fine.
who is like a light in his life, and then it kind of all goes a bit pear-shaped.
He's gone.
Whoa. Stop. So what I'll do is adjust the gradient on these keyframes.
All goes a bit pear-shaped.
He's gone.
Perhaps even a bit more so that it doesn't come in so suddenly. So look.
Light in his life, and then it kind of all goes a bit pear-shaped.
He's gone. And then he can roll me over.
The biggest challenge is trying to find a motivation for Gilroy that wasn't just crazy and maniacal and evil for the sake of evil. I suppose he is defined by his envy and his self-loathing and the fact that he was forgotten. It kind of generating all this spite and hatred.
Not liking.
Generating all this spite and hatred. Forgotten. It kind of
Okay, so I'm going to take the denoiser off this one. I feel like it's affected the quality of the voice. Let's have a look.
It kind of generating all this spite and hatred.
We've lost some of the syllables on there.
Hatred. Spite and hatred. So there's all sorts of crazy stuff going on.
Okay, so it still doesn't feel ideal in these tracks here, but
Hatred. So there's all sorts of crazy.
I'll put a -2 on that one, but the filter should affect that pretty well. Okay, so audio track mixer. And then for the rest of these, I would probably add a filter to everything, but just adding a -6 limiter. Actually, I'll undo that, because what I will do is to the main mix, I will add a -6 limiter. That means it won't ever clip. So if I play this back.
Bad Blood is about a writer whose past is coming back to haunt him, and he's grief-stricken and trying to move on, and he meets this young woman, Carrie, who is like a light in his life, and then it kind of all goes a bit pear-shaped.
He's gone. And then he can roll me over.
The biggest challenge was trying to find a motivation for Gilroy that wasn't just crazy and maniacal and evil for the sake of evil. I suppose he is defined by his envy and his self-loathing and the fact that he was forgotten. It kind of generating all this spite and hatred. There's all sorts of crazy stuff going on.
Okay, so absolutely still needs some work, definitely in the cleaning up these moments. So this audio needs more work, but the rest, the submix is controlling the levels of the music and the background audio. The interview content is being filtered by a dynamics filter, which brings up the lows and brings down the peaks and then stretches it all out to make it more even tone. And what I have remaining to do is to fix this.
Generating all this spite and hatred.
That click.
Hatred.
Also, this gap would be required. You'd be required to fill that with some type of scratch audio.
There's all sorts of crazy stuff going on.
And that sound.
There's all sorts of
that needs filtering, but we won't cover that today. Essentially, if I exported this, you know, minus those clicks and pops that are actually in this audio, and it would require some post cleanup. And sometimes you can't clean up that audio and you need to find some other audio to fill the track. But yeah, outside of that, these levels are fine for export to YouTube or any sort of film festival. And I guess if you're recording, you would want to make sure that these kind of things are not there in the background. Certainly you should be able to edit those out with a notch filter. I'm a little rusty with notch filters, so I will have to do some research, come back at you with how to do that. So hopefully this was helpful, and see you next time. Thanks.